Right now, what I'm doing is cutting paper for a project. So if you hear paper cutting in the background or searing, uh, that's what that is. Don't mind me. I gotta be doing something. I gotta be multitasking because I'm trying to just get ahead. Because there's nothing else to do but get ahead in life. Over the past few months, I've been just going through the woes, trying to keep positive, trying to know my worth, understand who I am, understand where I came from, understand who I am today, and to understand where I'm going. And through all that I have been through, with these challenges being faced from, I guess I could say, haters, I'm starting to understand through these divine experiences that I'm having, these dreams, these demonic attacks, and um, seeing, these repeated numbers, and having had experienced sleep paralysis. Just so many things that when I look back over my life that have happened that have been on a spiritual basis, on the surface look negative, but deep empathy, deep God-like empathy, deep Jesus empathy, um, deep love and Christ consciousness empathy are telling me that I'm on the right path. And even though, a lot of things look very grim right now, there are many other things that look very blessed, and I feel anointed, and that is what brings me to my message for today. Trying to understand, where the hate is coming from. It's not just surface level. It's something that's deeper about the notion of hate. Um, and if we look and turn to Matthew chapter 2, um, it really gives, if you are trying to become or are on your way to becoming a true believer, or it may already have been destined. I think a lot of things are predetermined, and that is what is bringing me to this message that I want to talk about today, about Jesus's early life, and how your early life can already be shaped in some ways. It's sometimes we can have goals for ourselves, but I do believe, especially because all of us have gifts that we're born with, and it's just not coming out of anywhere. It is part of DNA. It's part of what our parents and our grandparents had, but again, it's bigger than that. It's coming from a source that's so big, bigger than big, grander than grand. It's so big and it can be explained, and yet it can't be explained. And I think a lot of times, especially what I've been through in my own personal life, throughout my entire life, nearly, uh, I can't too much remember anything before the age of 5, but I can remember. I can just, ever since age 5, I can just remember things vaguely and some very clearly, in which I was being hated on very early on, without really any reason. And it's starting to dawn on me, and more of my awakeness, that this is coming from something, and the something is God. The something is Jesus. I know this. I'm starting to understand this better. And when you look at most of the figures in the Bible, And most of the people in life throughout our world, but especially here in America, that have really tried to come through and make change, you know, they've had their challenges and struggle with outsiders that want to get in the way of that change, that positive change. Because even though Satan, you know, is, you know, has taken over this world, this world was God's from the beginning. And I just truly believe, no matter how many, I know some people say that life isn't fair, but my ideals tell me that in the beginning, if God created this and this was God's, it must return to God in some form or another. And that goodness and righteousness has to prevail in the end. We all have it within us. It's just many of us want to tap into that other side that's not so good too, because it's easier. You know, it's harder living in a Christ, and I'm learning to understand that now. It's a challenge, especially being Christian, because there's no other model other than Jesus Christ through any other religion. All of the other religions are inspirational. I've studied some of them, but no other text, no other figure, no other person has been able to give us what Christ is giving us. And when you're trying to go on that path of getting toward that right direction in your life, it's going to be arrows and darts going towards you. And I think that can be from early on, even before, you know, you can be so-called born again, that you can be destined for greatness very early on, and you can get a lot of heat from that early on. But I want to turn to Matthew chapter 2, because that chapter gives so much understanding for what's going on in my life and what's going on in a lot of other people's lives, a lot of individuals' lives that are on that path for greatness. And it's just something deeper. It's not just surface level hate that somebody is hating on you because of maybe this quality. I think deep down, and many have said it here on YouTube and just in life in general, that it's something about an innate fear or an innate enviousness of the person that is hating on you, which they have too potential in them that they have yet to see. Because if you have enough time in your life to really just go through dishing out an energy that's malice, you know, hateful, gossip, backbiting, you know, and then being a friend that's really an enemy, you know, a wolf in sheep clothing, so to speak. You know, it has to be something that is inadequate within oneself and insecure within oneself that would cause that individual to be so attentive to someone else. And like I said, I'm learning that and starting to understand my place now. I used to think that, you know, in some ways that I was cursed. But I'm starting to, when you look at every strength and every weakness, which is one of my hallmark aphorisms that I go by in my life, that there's always a better side to things. The negative can have a purpose. Even in the negative, it can be a purpose. Even it can be a good purpose. But if you learn to look at things, I'm learning to understand now that God has granted me so much, and to whom much is given, much is required. And I understand that in order for me to get to a better place, to a more progressive place in life, I gotta go through things. You know, Christianity, we want to, we have this platform today in Christianity where we want to make things look good. The prosperity gospel is what is really called, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm a diehard here in Jackson a Hallelujah FM fan. I mean, that is what keeps me motivated. Now, I'm sure they keep thousands, hundreds, uh, millions of people motivated. But what a lot of times is the messages are not really taught in Christianity, that you have to go through the hardships in order to get there. No cross, no crown. It's not going to just be always easy. And if you're especially trying to be a representative of Christ, you might not have to go through exactly what he went through. Of course, I mean, but everybody has a cross that they have to bear. No one is exempt, even the narcissist, even that gossiper. People out here that's doing the devious work. You're not exempt. It's going to be a time in your life where you're going to have to face, what you have to deal with, just like the person that you're bullying or that you're singling out. But we're going to talk about that more in a minute. But I want to get into this chapter because, as I going through the motions in my own life and trying to really understand a deeper aspect of why I go through what I go through. There's a saying that goes somewhat like, to whom, how does it go? If you know the wise, you can bear with almost any house, something like that. And I'll read about that later. I got it in another book somewhere. And when you know that, it starts to provide perspective on having a bigger purpose than what you intended to have in your life. Purpose, a lot of times we always tie a purpose to occupation. And in some ways it is tied to the occupation, especially if you have that opportunity. For me, it's teaching, but I was listening to a guy talk about, how do you know you're called to preach? Well, you don't have to. We've monetized and made it financially based that you have to go to school for something that you already have as a gift from God. So it doesn't mean that you have to get licensed for it and all of that. So it's not necessary that you get licensed for it to make it legal. But as far as it being spiritual, it is already given to you to do. So that's the point that I want to speak about today in terms of this chapter. Chapter 2, Matthew. Chapter 2, Matthew. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. Now I want to talk about that for a few minutes in regards to a star. Recently, the one of our Supreme Court judges passed away. Miss Ruth, I'll just call her Miss Ruth. I don't know about her last name, but there was a clip on that was celebrating her life, her homegoing, and it was going through different things that she had said, quotes that she came up with, and she said that she felt like she was born under a very bright star, because she felt like she had been given the opportunity in her life to make change to making sure that people are treated fairly and that they're due their justice. Now, a lot of Christians believe that, having ties to astrology is demonic or sinful or bad, and to put it very clearly. But how can we reference this? How can we look at this when it's saying that, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. There has to be some relevance to, I believe, and that's why I partially believe that the Bible may not be actually finished. That's just my view on it, because a lot of things are not really said and understood fully as I've read through things throughout the Bible, and I just think it's something else other than that that's greater. It's just not the Bible itself. It had to be something greater before, and it's definitely something great after it, which is God. God is so big in so many ways that is easy to understand and yet is very challenging to understand. But anyway, so getting back to this verse again, it has to be something, some ties to understanding our birth dates and our years. I'm gonna get into that in another session because I want to talk about that in terms of how I've been experiencing these repeated numbers. And it hasn't been anything negative at all. It's been all good. I want to talk about that later though. But I just want to bring that up in terms of, a star in the east being seen when Jesus was born, and a lot of Christians not giving connection to astrology, thinking that it's bad. It may be, a lot of things have been distorted, including Christianity over time. So a lot of times it has to be some way, some other way, some godly way that we can understand without just the reading of itself, because it hasn't always been writing as a skill or as a form of communication. It's been other ways of communication. Okay. Anyway, chapter 2, verse 3. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, why is he troubled? Why is King Herod troubled about a baby? When millions of babies are born every day, what is it about? What does King Herod already know about this situation, about the circumstance of Christ coming? And that's what brings me to this point that today's main title or topic is, maybe it's something within the hater that they already know from very early on about you, in this circumstance about me, that they know that it's something within you that's good, that's great, and they want to try to defeat that. Because how else would King Herod even know? Why would he be troubled? Why would he be fearful? Again, and that's the backdrop of hate, fear. Why is he wanting to, let's read on, okay? Verse 4. Okay, let me go back to verse 3 and reread that again. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus is written by the prophet. And thou, and I'm in verse 6 by the way, and thou Bethlehem in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, okay, this is verse 7. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. Verse 8, and he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. Now, why early on does let's go back, verse 3 and 4 is saying, he was troubled. Okay, verse 3. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Why is he troubled? He is troubled, yet he's saying that, look, okay, I want to worship this kid, this baby, so bring him to me. It's some ulterior motive that we can already see in this chapter that's going on to help us understand that, he's using that as a cover-up to say, well, I want to worship him, bring him to me. Okay. And why are you troubled? Why are you troubled about a baby unless it's something that you know ahead of time? And like I said, it brings relevance to my understanding of my own things that I'm going through. More or less, in my lifetime, in my short life, that I've always been somewhat ridiculed, despised, scorned, hated, all those things. More or less. I mean, it's been extreme in some times, and it's been, trivial in other times. But why is that? Why is that? I'm trying to find that within myself. Is it possible that the haters already know? And because the haters are disguised as devils. And I want to get away from the idea. A lot of people would say that, oh, well, that's a demon working through them. Well, if you can want to be of goodness yourself, that can be an angel working through you. But I think it's also a human aspect to it, because you only tap into, or what only anything only taps into you that you allow it to tap into you. So we have to get into terms of understanding that there's a human responsibility in taking in whatever energy we want to take in. So even though, yes, this is demonic in terms of the way that King Herod is feeling about Jesus as a baby, to some extent, especially if he's fearful and he's troubled, it has to deal with himself, his inner self, that he needs to repair. Okay, let's continue to read on. Chapter 2, verse 9. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. Verse 10. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. Okay, so again, going back to, there has to be some connection to astrology and our lives. I don't totally believe in horoscopes all the time, because sometimes they're way off and sometimes they're head on point. It may be a pseudoscience, but I think there's something to that if we're seeing that about Jesus himself. Okay, verse 12. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their country another way. So, possibly in verse 12, let me read that again. And being born of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. So, is it possible that Herod, we don't know this, I don't know this at least, but is it possible that Herod already has, because these wise men already have a sense of what's going on, not only because they saw this great star, but also because they had the dreams. Like I said, dreams are powerful. I don't think dreams should be. I keep a dream journal, or I keep a journal, next to me during my sleeping hours, because I want to record things. And like I said, recently, as a lot of people that have been, giving their testimony on YouTube, a lot of people are having the same type of dreams. These very spiritual based dreams. A lot of times, dreams that are based in, like I'm having, demonic forces coming in trying to take your energy. And I think that's all a part of what I'm facing in my life, personal life, right now, with a lot of physical hate. And when I mean physical hate, I mean here on earth, in the flesh, that kind of hate from others. I'm also facing that in my dreams, in some of my dreams, not every night, but some of my dreams. And that tells me, again, going back to every strength and every weakness, that's not a bad thing, because if the devil is out to attack, like the devil is out to attack and sending his demons, that's a good sign that at least if I'm not on a perfect track, I'm getting on a good track, I'm on the right track. Because I got things I got to work on. But I've been trying to do right for a long time. And I think there's partly with, and that's why I say that in one of my quotes, what I'm experiencing is a microcosm of the macrocosm of things that are going on with the spirit shifts in the world. There are a lot of spiritual shifts. We shifting economically with possible food shortages, people not able to work. We're in a health crisis. We don't have a vaccine for this virus, and it's widespread. And it's just so many things that are going on. That going back again to numbers and time and stars and astrology, it's all in the making. I mean, a lot of things that we're experiencing now as a society, and I mean a world society, are occurring because it's already been revealed to us in terms of Revelation, the book of Revelation. It's already coming. We're in it. Okay. But anyway, going back to that, let me read that one more time. Verse 12. And being warned of God in a dream, they should not return to Herod. They departed into their country another way. Verse 13. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. So God already knows, and Herod already knows. But Herod already knows, obviously, from a very demonic spirit. He already knows. So when we go back to saying that he was troubled, what are you troubled for? You're troubled because this person, this being, this high energy, positive energy, great energy, righteousness, and goodness wants to come in and is not set to destroy things. He just wants to make change for the betterment of the world society. Jesus wanted to do that. Martin Luther King wanted to do that. Rosa Parks wanted to do that. Abraham Lincoln wanted to do that. John F. Kennedy wanted to do that. Dorothea D. wanted to do that. So many people. Malcolm X wanted to do that. So many. And yet they had haters that came in to defeat their purpose. And it's still people that are waking up. Thank God. This is even though 2020 is a tumultuous year, it's the most tumultuous year that I've ever lived. I don't know about anybody else, but it has been. I've never seen anything like it. And I think, I'm keeping perspective, and I hope I'm not wrong for saying this, but this is just a perspective, that if God is keeping us here, those that are left, due to all that's going on, we have a major battle to fight. And that is a major battle, especially against those that are evil-minded and with evil intentions. So that's one of the greatest things that really come out of this, is that we need to keep hope. We need to help heal. We need to help goodness to come up. We need to help righteousness to come up. We need to help, of course, clarity to come up. All the confusion and gossip and backbiting and just doing different things to people to hurt them is a way of defeating, is a larger purpose. It's a way of defeating that goodness and that righteousness that needs to come forth. And that's why we're experiencing all that we're experiencing here, that we're experiencing, I believe, especially for me personally. But like I said, it's not just a personal concern. It is a bigger concern at hand. Okay? All right, let me read that again. That's verse 13. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring the word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. So Herod's motive is not to worship him at all, as stated in verse 8. It's to destroy him, which is coming from his insecurities of being a ruler. So obviously he must have some insecurities about, you're a king. Now, you're supposed to have power, and yet you're feeling troubled, okay, as it's stated in verse 3. Why are you troubled if you have the power? Because not only is insecurity in him, but he also knows the power that is within Christ that's coming. This is a child, a baby at this time, have overpowering an adult. Okay, so that's why I go back and say it may be already destined. A lot of things are already predetermined. It's not, we can co-create with life. I do believe that, but a lot of things, especially when you recognize your gifts, a lot is already predetermined that God has given us way before we even knew. Praise God. Thank you, Jesus. Okay, let me continue. That's good stuff. Verse 14. When he rose, he took the young child and his mother, and he, that talking about Joseph, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt. Verse 15. And was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, because they didn't come back to him, he was like, where they at? You know, well, y'all supposed to have come back to me and told me, y'all didn't come back. Y'all went the other way because God told him in a dream that you don't need to go that way. Okay, God was already forewarning him. Thank goodness for that. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children, Lord, that were in Bethlehem and in all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, my goodness, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So he's confused because the wise men, the wise men have been wise in more ways than one, because God has sent them the message to don't go back to Herod. He has bad intentions, and like I said early on, Herod knows that something is going on. That's why, like, when I read the Bible, I don't believe in just pulling out verses all the time, because you have to read in context. I mean, there are fundamentalists, and people have always done it, people still do it, is that they pull from verses that are connected somewhat to each other, but they have nothing to do with each other in the context of what's written. I mean, you could pull something from Genesis and go to Isaiah, and then go from Isaiah to Timothy, which are, time periods across so many different eras and times. They can be relatable, but if we read through the whole account of what's going on, be open to also reading broadly, or in terms of a modern way. That's what you call modernism. All right, anyway. So that's good. I mean, these wise men like, nope, we can't go back that way. Don't talk to him. So, because they have found out through God his intentions. And he's troubled. And goes through, and this is very, catastrophic, that because he doesn't know which baby is which, he goes to kill a lot of them. Now, how powerful are you? You're using your power in a negative way. So that's going to even turn the people more so against you, because they don't want you, killing these kids for no reason. Okay, verse 17. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, in Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not. But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt. And this is going into verse 20, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. Okay, so Herod is now gone, and all those kids are gone, and mothers are mourning their children, as far as to my understanding. Because Herod went on this serial murder spree, and just going around because he's fearful. Again, hate or fear is really the backdrop or inner emotion of outward hate. Hate is really fear is really the inner emotion of the outward display of hate. So let me say that again. Hate is the inner emotion, the almost gut emotion. I keep saying it wrong. Fear is that gut emotion of the outward display of hate. Fear is the gut emotion of the outward display of hate. And it's sad because, and I in knowing that, it now helps me to understand why Jesus in a perspective is saying that you need to love your enemies. Because if you can, all of us, I believe, all of us individually are each other in some other time and place. Let me say that again. All of us are each other in some other time and place. I believe I learned that from Ralph Smart or Infinite Waters or some from some quote that I saw online. I believe that because at the core, we're all human. We're all human beyond our outer shell, beyond our race, beyond our uh, religion, beyond our gender, beyond how much money we have or don't have, beyond our age, beyond our stout, whether we're tall or short or skinny or fat or whatever. We're so much more deeper than who we are, and that's why if you can learn to, if people can have empathy for each other, and I believe Jesus and God is a God of empathy. That's my connection that I have with my God, my Jesus, for all the things that I have experienced in my life. I really do believe that Jesus at the core understands us as human beings, what we face collectively, but more so or more importantly, what we face individually. And that goes back to what I was saying from the beginning. Maybe it's that the haters know something, very early on. If you look at, I've looked at a documentary on James Earl Ray's life, the assassin of Martin Luther King Jr. And if you look at his past, which your past doesn't have to make you, because I'm dealing with that issue right now. That's why I'm getting a lot of hate, because people are basing things on who I am today based upon things of the past. And people that don't even actually know me personally at all. But that's okay, because like I said, that's why I'm touching on this message today, because I want to empower other people to see the greatness in them, because I'm also encouraging myself, because I'm going through these challenges in my life right now, but I'm trying to do everything as possible to keep myself, because I know myself, which is the bottom line, and I know my worth, and I know what I have, and all of us have that. I'm no different. I used to think a polymath was somebody that's particularly special, or a genius was, but all of us are a genius at something. And again, to whom much is given, much is required. God is not going to give you a lot, and it's not going to be a cross that you have to bear. Sometimes our crosses, are more than others, what others have to deal with. But that's a beautiful thing, because as long as, and that's why I say again that, and thank you, Lord, for this time of giving me this message and this information to come through to help the people, because that's what I want to do, to help the people, and Lord, to help myself. Because I'm trying to get home. All of us are trying to get home. Even the hater is trying to get home. But it goes back to what I'm saying about love your enemies. If we can understand that there are some insecurities in Herod the king, we can understand that there are insecurities within us. This is a king, and yet he's insecure about a baby, because he knows the potential of that baby, that Christ, that Jesus that's coming along to making changes in the world. It just, I have to just pause for a minute and dwell on that, because that's powerful, because it helps me to understand, to put, if I have enough empathy to put myself in another person's place. I wish it could turn around. People could understand me, but I have enough empathy in me to understand why I'm getting what I'm getting. Again, fear is the backdrop emotion, or the subtle emotion, or the covert emotion of the outward appearance or physical manifestation of hate. It makes very much sense now. I was understanding this as God was bringing this message to me without verbalizing, but now that I verbalize it more and reading this more, it all makes much more sense. Yes, good stuff. Praise God. Thank you, Jesus. Okay, we're going to finish out the last portion, and I want to thank you for your time because time is precious as well. Thank you for giving me your time to just be able to share this with you, to keep the faith, to keep hope for your life, to help heal 2020, and to be able to use all that you have within you. That is my prayer, that to be able to use all that is within all of us to be able to bring righteousness and goodness and fairness and clarity to the world. I do believe we can defeat the devil. I don't think that just because a prophecy is open, has been professed, that we can't defeat it. You know, just because something is destined to happen doesn't mean we can change things around. It's never too late as long as we have the time. Okay. Verse 20, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother. Okay, that's Joseph, Jesus, and Mary. And go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. Verse 21, and he rose and took the young child and his mother and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee. Okay, so Herod's successor, his son, is taking over. So he's thinking, well, wait a minute. God, you told me to go to Egypt at first, then Israel, but then we got this Herod's son, okay, so he's coming up. So we may need to go a little bit some other place. So Joseph is being prudent, and he's being buried. This is a great relationship that he's having for Jesus, even though Jesus is not, Jesus is basically his stepson. But that just goes to show that even you don't have to wait for the love of your family to be validated. And I'm going to get into that in another lesson later. Because I think that's part of what I'm experiencing too. But it just goes to show a lot of times whoever your spiritual family is may not be the family that you're born into, unfortunately. It should be. I was always raised to believe family's going to be there, and because that was my mother's value, and I believe wholeheartedly in her and her values. But things have changed around to make me question and think otherwise. I haven't given up, but it's just made me think and question otherwise. But anyway, get into that until another session. Last verse 23, and he came and dwelt. Let me just go back for a minute. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid. And then we're talking about he heard, Joseph heard. He was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee. And when he came, and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets. He shall be called a Nazarene, and he meaning Jesus. Okay, so it just goes to show that, like I said, I'm trying to understand a lot of times why is there a pattern or pathology in terms of the things that I'm dealing with. I understand it on an individual level now, especially from clarity from verse chapter 2. I understand it on a collective family level because I'm seeing patterns through family that have connections with what I'm going through, and maybe that's why I'm waking up more, because it's helping me to understand that we can. That's why I say, instead of fulfilling a prophecy or something that has been occurring, in this case over time in family, a curse, if I'll use that word loosely because I don't want to say that's what it is, but for lack of a better word, a pathology. Okay, I use what Iyanla Van Zant always says. I like that about her because she always tells about the connections that we have with our families that's more spiritually based. Those people that we are born of the same blood. Uh, like I said, I understand what I'm facing in terms of a physical aspect of a of a collective family aspect, but more so, and most importantly, from chapter 2, Matthew, is from a spiritual basis. Because the bottom line is, I always go through bouts of positivity and negativity, but I always try to come back to the positive because I know that if God created all that God has created here on earth, even though the devil is very staunch about taking it over, it's still God's in the end. It's still God's in the end. And if God created us, we are still God's in the end. We belong to God. We belong to Jesus in the end. And knowing that helps me not only to minister to you, but to minister to myself that we're going to be all right. As one of the gospel songs says, we're going to be all right because we know what our worth is. We know what God has given us. But to whom much is given, much is required. We know what work needs to be done. And on that note, I want to thank you for your time today, giving me your time to be able to hear me out, to give this message. There will be more to come. I'm very excited about wanting to do this because I want to help. That's one thing I can say about from my understanding of myself very early on as a child. I've always wanted to help. When it came down to even working as in terms of an occupation, what God wanted me to do, I just wanted to give back because it's good to give back to yourself, but I don't think we're just here. Jackie Robinson said that as well. I don't remember the exact quote, but we're not just here to just give to ourselves and let that be it. We're here to share. That's what Jesus came for. To give a new message, to give a brighter day, to make changes. And even though Herod was troubled, as is stated in verse 2, Herod was fearful of change. Not only change collectively because his reign is threatened, but also the insecurities that he has within himself that help us to understand him as a person when we take away his royal title. Thank you for your time today. There will be more to come. And I hope that you are blessed in this message today. I hope that you go read it for yourself. And like I said, to read things in a more broad perspective to get the whole account as opposed to just reading verses here and there. Not saying stop doing it, but it's a way to get better understanding. And in order to understand what you're going through in your life, go to Christ. Go to the Bible. Pray daily for healing. Pray daily for wisdom. Pray daily for insight. And pray daily for Christ to help manifest progression and righteousness and justice in your life. In Jesus' name, I pray sincerely, honestly, earnestly, and truthfully.